The automobile is one of the most important inventions that revolutionized the modern world. In America, the rich history of car culture runs deep as technology continues to shape the future of the industry. Jason Stein,
former publisher of Automotive News,
is here to share the stories of people passionate about cars, from industry leaders and innovators to car-obsessed celebrities. Buckle up as Jason takes you inside the boardroom, onto the track, and around the bend on Cars and Culture on SiriusXM Business Radio.
Welcome to SiriusXM's Cars and Culture. I'm your host, Jason Stein. In car culture circles, in NASCAR circles, in the restoration or custom build business, or even in animated car movies, there are a few names that bring more respect than Ray Evernham. Accomplished crew chief, champion, broadcaster, personality. Ray Evernham checks all the boxes and more. In his own self-deprecating way, of course, Ray doesn't think of it that way. He's the self-described Forrest Gump from a New Jersey suburb. He's just the guy who wanted to be a race car driver until he realized he couldn't be. And he's just the guy who ended up in the right place with the right people at the perfect time to make history. You don't end up in the Motorsports Hall of Fame or in the NASCAR Hall of Fame by accident. And you don't end up revolutionizing a sport or working with one of the greatest drivers and race teams of all time, either with Jeff Gordon or Rick Hendrick, or the team that put Dodge back on the map in NASCAR, if you don't belong there. But those are just the racing accomplishments. Ray is so much more. If anything, he looks at himself as a custodian or a creator of car culture, someone who works incredibly hard to immerse himself in all things cars, whether it's collecting, restoring, or even showing vehicles at places like Pebble Beach, where he won a Best in Class recently for a 1965 Bronner Hawk Indy car. Or maybe he's just pushing car culture down to younger generations with his role in even Pixar films Cars 3. Even through his car restoration and custom build business, Big Iron Garage, or his TV show Americana, Ray Evernham is doing his part. And with him, there is so much to look at in terms of passion and emotion behind that car culture. The bottom line is that Ray is a fixture in the space, and it's way beyond his ultra-successful NASCAR history. As Ray says, racing made him the money. The rest is all just for fun. Today, it's all elements of Ray's incredible journey on Cars and Culture.
Hi, I'm Ray Evernham, and this is Cars and Culture with Jason Stein.
He's a man who's always on the move. He's been a part of many programs and folks who were very much on the move at a fast clip. Ray Evernham, thank you so much for being on the program. It is a pleasure to have you on Cars and Culture.
Oh, thanks, Jason. And I appreciate your patience. I know we've been trying to get this scheduled since we met at the Amelia Island Concourse. So it's great to be able to talk to you. I know you've had a lot of great guests, so I'm honored to be on.
Well, thank you. Let's talk about Amelia for a moment, because indeed, that is the last time that you and I spoke. It was my first time there. What a special event. And you've said to me, it's a cultural icon, and they do a great job of trying to preserve cars and culture. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, you know, the cars culture obviously has got to evolve as the age evolves, and you still want to keep this group of cars and that group of cars, and all the way back to when Bill Warner first started the Amelia Island Concours. He did a great job building it and getting it there, and as certainly Bill's time went on and built it, he came to a point to where, okay, how do you make this thing bigger? And McKeel Haggerty and his group came in there with a lot of new ideas and great ideas and resources to be connected with our younger stuff, with the community and coffee thing, and a lot of the other things that they're doing, like the Concours de Lemons, or I love stuff like that. That whole, to expand that culture, because the car culture is really, really big. When you look at all the pieces of it, together, no matter whether you like the classics or the muscle cars or the race cars or the hot rods or whatever, when you bring all that back together, it's huge. And then you throw in the Porsche guys, the Ferrari guys, the BMW guys, it's huge. And, the folks at Haggerty have the ability to do that. And I think that when we're doing that, it just continues to make our culture so strong.
McKeel Haggerty, who's been on this program, said about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, to the New York Times, that his sole mission was to preserve car culture. That's exactly what they were trying to do. You're kind of right in the middle of the whole car culture mix too, aren't you?
I am, but but it's what I love. People think, hey, Ray's a racer, and I love racing. Sure, I love racing. And that's how I made my career, made my name. But I really love cars, right? So that's why I enjoy being at places like Amelia or Pebble Beach or going to the local hot rod show. And, I have friends like Rick Hendrick and Jeff Gordon, but I also have friends like Bill Warner and McKeel Haggerty and some of the other folks, that we've met in media. I judge at the Amelia Island Concours. I put on some of their seminars. I help do some things at the Chattanooga deal getting cars. I just like to be around car people. And when people come and look at my collection, they're like, wow, they're pretty surprised. They're like, that's pretty eclectic. You go from having a Model T pickup truck, a 1924 in the original condition, to having the Superbirds and things that I had. And it's just it's my taste in cars is very eclectic, and that's what the car culture is. So ultimately, I made my money racing, but I'm a car guy.
Yeah, you are a car guy too. A guy from Hazlet, New Jersey, becomes a car guy. a guy from Hazlet ends up at places like Rockingham and Darlington. I mean, tell me a little bit about your journey. Tell me about becoming Ray Evernham.
That's one of those things. The easiest way to explain it, I tell people, look, I am the Forrest Gump of motorsports. I have no idea sometimes. A lot of it is just being in the right place at the right time, but getting the opportunity to be in those places at that right time comes from the passion of wanting to do something with cars and think my whole life. And I was very, very fortunate. There's a lot of racing in the tri-state area, a lot of open wheel modifieds and things like that in the New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York area. Got to know a lot of people there. But honestly, biggest break came when Roger Penske, Jay Signori, Les Richter decided to move IROC from Reading, Pennsylvania to Tinton Falls, New Jersey. And I got an opportunity to work for IROC and under the supervision of Jay Signori and obviously the umbrella of Roger Penske. That was really the biggest break I ever got in my life. Not just what I learned from them, but the opportunities that it got me. And I realized, man, if I ever really want to do this, I'm not going to be able to stay in New Jersey and do it. I'm either going to have to move to Indianapolis and race, or I'm going to have to move south and race stock cars.
You were a modified racer, but that moment that you just talked about with IROC was when you had the chance to become a chassis specialist, right at 26. And the word is that everybody was really impressed that you could handle some of the technological adjustments that were going into a vehicle. But growing up, was that really where you thought you were going to end up?
Oh no, I was sure that the only reason I went to IROC, because I just knew that when Roger met me and saw me drive my modified, he was definitely going to put me in his Indy car. I mean, it was like, my goodness, I'd been winning races at Wall Stadium. Why wouldn't he even take me to the Indy 500? So I saw that path. But what they did give me the opportunity to do was test drive the IROC cars. So the way that worked, we'd work on them, set them up, and we'd get to the track. And Dave Marcus and George Fulmer would have the final say, but the cars would need to be shooken down, checked out mechanically. And that was my job. So I got to drive all of the IROC cars and share notes with Dave Marcus and George Fulmer and a lot of the other drivers. And when you're with those guys and you're the guy they're communicating to about what this feels like and what that feels like, you learn a lot. And I think, between working with Dave and George, and then the incredible amount of stuff that I learned from working with Goodyear on the tires, it gave me that feeling like the drivers would talk to me, but I knew what they were talking about because I'd felt it and had driven myself. And I think that's really a big part of the success that I had with Jeff Gordon. I could feel what he was telling me, explaining it, and it led me to know where I needed to go with the race car. And, there just comes a point in your life when you realize, hey, I'm probably don't have the talent to be a superstar driver, but I can be a coach. It's no different than football or baseball or whatever. Some of the best coaches were okay players, but they understood the game And when they applied that science to people who really had the talent and ability, good things happened. And it kind of sucked to find out that I didn't really have the talent that I thought I had. But hey, as I always tell everybody, well, I wish I could sing like Elvis Presley too, but I couldn't do that either. So
right,
it's just
right.
part of it. But so again, my years at IROC combined being behind the wheels with the many different race cars that I've driven in my life, because I've driven on dirt, I've driven on pavement, I've driven cars with wings, cars without wings, cars with fenders, without fenders, a lot of cars, and thinking about the science of making those things work and then translating it back to what a driver was telling you. And, I guess I miss those days, because now everything's done based off of all of the data in the car and the simulation, and it's this, that's kind of taking the fun out of it for me. When you used to have, look, your tools were stopwatches and tire temperatures and
right.
shock travel and things like that. Now it's pretty much all of the data on the cars tells the driver how to drive them.
Yeah, the simulation rooms that I've been in at Hendrick Motorsports, for example, are war rooms. It's like looking at a NASA screen, Ray. I mean,
Yeah.
you didn't have any of that going.
No, I was went back and helped Rick and Jeff for a while, and some of that I actually when I went over to Dodge and we did a lot of work with the folks at McLaren, I knew that was coming, so we started that when I did my Dodge team, and then continued. When I went back to Hendrick, really pushed about getting that, and they have taken that and just exploded.
Yeah.
General Motors is, they just built a new tech center and everything right down there by
Right.
Hendrick. They've just the technology has gone exponentially. Like I look at those cars now and think I wouldn't even begin to know how to start one.
We're a long way from rubbing and racing, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I want to talk about meeting Jeff Gordon because it was a little bit of serendipity to some extent. You had just kind of walked out. You had started working with Alan Kulwicki around 1990, 91 or so, at end of 91. And it wasn't going to work for you for a couple of different reasons, but you're walking out of the garage area and you run into a couple of guys, right? And what do they say to you?
Yeah. Well, you got to go back just a little bit before that. You see, actually, Jeff and I did some races together in 1990 and really hit it off. When I left IROC, I started my own business. And in between building my own cars, Andy Petrie called me up, who was Harry Gant's crew chief, and said, hey, my buddy's going to run this kid in 4 or 5 races. He needs some help. Will you help him? Well, that kid turned out to be Jeff Gordon. We hit it off. We didn't do great. We sat on the, I think, outside pole at Rockingham, crashed a couple times, whatever. Jeff goes back to Indiana to race. So, and I go back to New Jersey to race. So I'm trying to become a race car driver. Mm. Well, Jeff gets a ride in, I think, the Ford dealer's car, and he ran the 91 season. And I ended up going back, and I got hurt in my modified. So I couldn't race anymore. And I had been doing some stuff for Alan Kulwicki. So he brought me down to North Carolina, and Jeff's down there, and Jeff wasn't doing great, not as great as he should have been doing. And Alan was one of the most brilliant people on the planet, super race car driver, but his personality and my personality. Look, Jason, we were literally, everybody goes, oh, we were literally throwing stuff at one another in a short period of time. So I quit the day before the Daytona 500, bumped into Preston Miller and Lee Morse from Ford. And they said, where are you going? I said, home. They said, hotel. I said, no, New Jersey. I'm done. I don't have a job. And they said, hey, calm down. We think we have something, because Jeff said, I need a better chassis guy. I need a better handling car. So the Ford people put me over on Bill Davis's race team, and Jeff Gordon and I got going again and started winning races and poles immediately. But had not been for that chance meeting, had I not bumped into those guys, walking out the gate at Daytona on a Saturday afternoon, I could have been selling frozen yogurt on the Jersey boardwalk. I mean, who knows?
Well, and in fact, the owner, Bill Davis Racing, didn't want to hire you, right? But somebody insisted that you be hired.
Well, Bill just didn't have the budget, and he wasn't sure if he needed me. He didn't know me, really. Not that many people knew me. Preston Miller and Lee Morse and I talked quite a bit, because I had built some Ford cars for the Australian race driver Dick Johnson, and they, for some reason, they figured I was pretty sharp, and they knew They knew I had done some things for Alan, and I'd also done some things for Oldsmobile. And again, a lot of people knew my IROC background. Some people didn't. And Bill just didn't have the budget. And he's like, I'm not sure if I need that guy. I got this guy and whatnot. And Ford said, well, we'll pay and put him over there. And when I went over there the first week, it was not. They were like, I started cutting their cars up, changing all the front end stuff. And Bill's like, whoa, like, wait a, hey kid, this ain't a modified, and we went to the track and just sat on the pole, like, boom. And they were like, wow. So, finally we sat on some poles and we kept missing the race setup. And they said, well, let's go test Atlanta. And we went, they got me some test time. I needed to understand the, heavier car, smaller tires and all this stuff. And we went and tested Atlanta and came up with a setup down there. And we ended up winning the Atlanta race, beating Mark Martin and Dale Earnhardt and groups like that. And that really started the ball rolling for us.
The ball did start rolling. You remained the crew chief for Jeff Gordon after he moved over to Hendrick Motorsports and into the Winston Cup Series. Final race of 92 to 99, and the rest was history. Tell me a little bit, Jeff's been on this program. Tell me a little bit about what you noticed in Jeff that was different than other drivers.
Jeff, I met him, he was a kid when I met him. And I was always impressed with the fact of how mature he was about his racing and how high his racing IQ was. And by that, I mean, just the ability to see stuff, to get that racing, people who have golfed at an early age have a high golf IQ or a baseball IQ. Jeff had a very, very high racing IQ, and his ability to break something down to describe what the car was doing or what a lap was, reminded me very much of the stars I had worked with at IROC. I'm talking about Andretti, Foyt, Unser, Earnhardt, Rusty Wallace. They all spoke very differently about how the car was breaking down. And that would always tell me that Jeff was much more comfortable in his environment. And, there's a thing I read about great athletes like Michael Jordan, and they talk about how their sense of time, like a second, to you and I is different, right? Where it is to them, where Jeff could process so much information around there. And I thought to myself, there's no way that's experience. This kid's 18 years old.
Right.
This is talent. This is an incredible ability. And he just always had that. And people say, well, what was Jeff's biggest, what was his biggest plus? What was it, the thing that made him, and, you think when you talk about race drivers, oh, they're brave or they're this or that, Jeff, extremely smart about racing. If I said to him, look, I need you to get off the right front tire, get the car over on the right rear tire, or I need you to do this and that, he would just somehow do it. And, you would read the tire pressure and go like, okay, where if you said it to somebody else, other guys I work with, they'd be like, what? Jeff is, again, to me, he's always going to be the greatest race car driver. He's still like a little brother to me. So he called me tomorrow and said, hey man, I'm going racing. I'd be going with him.
Yeah. You were the head of the Rainbow Warriors, and the pit crew really was considered one of the most innovative, and you helped improve duration, efficiency of pit stops, and you most importantly maybe created a group of specialists. Sometimes they were even former athletes who trained for their specific tasks. Nobody had really done it like that before, Ray. Where did that come from?
When I really started to look at the pit stop stuff, there were people that were doing things the Wood brothers were phenomenal, right? And Richard Childress with his group, I think they called them the Junkyard Dogs at that time. All phenomenal guys, right? Great. But they also worked on the car 12, 14, 16 hours a day. So that didn't leave them a lot of time to pit stop, to make practices or, I started to think honestly, in fairness to Alan, when I first went there, Alan had us all working out. He wanted us all to work out. But again, same problem. No time to practice. You really no time to work out, or you'd be so dog tired from working on the car, it'd be hard to concentrate on pit stops. So I started to think, why not have a different group of guys pit this car so that they can focus on pit stops. They can focus on their health and their ability and not be tired from working on the car 12 hours a day. And I say 12 hours a day because, in those days, there wasn't all these like, oh, you got to come in and you work it from 7 to 4 and you go home. There's none of that. You came in and you worked till it was done, and the crews weren't as big as they are now. So, it was a lot of hours. So we took that approach. Had a lot of people tell us it wouldn't work, but I will tell you that Rick Hendrick saw what we were doing, believed in it, and put a lot of support behind us to do that, and then saw the results. And, when I look at what they're doing now and what everybody does, it's kind of the standard. So I guess in some ways I'm proud of that, in the sport. In other ways, I'm like, damn, I've cost everybody a lot of money over the years too, because it's gotten expensive,
Yeah, for sure. There are a million moments in that storied career working alongside Jeff. A couple that stand out that maybe exemplify what the two of you and the team were trying to do together. Are there moments in time? Maybe it was the first Brickyard 400, or maybe it was another point in time that really stands out.
Well, your first win's always going to stand out. Our first win together at Atlanta, and with the Busch car with Bill Davis, and I will tell you, I love Bill Davis, and I had more fun working at Bill Davis's because it was only at that time, it was only about 4 or 5 of us, and everybody did everything. And Bill's one of the funniest people on the planet. He has a really sarcastic sense of humor, so we had a lot of fun. And then our first win at Charlotte, but really it was the Brickyard that changed. It changed the world for us, right? We looked at, he said, they did 2 tires at Charlotte. They did it, whatever. We went to the Brickyard, and I think we beat everybody pretty heads up, and it really changed things. It gave Jeff confidence. It gave me confidence. It gave the team confidence. And it really took us to that next level where we were able to go and battle for the championship because we believed we could. And that really changed where we were at. And I think that when I talk about probably our biggest race, our biggest victory as a team, when you look at the 1997 Darlington 500, the Southern 500, it was for $1 million, tons of pressure. Last one to win it was Bill Elliott, all this stuff. That day, we did not have a good car. We had about a 5th place car. And I tell everybody, like, look, we did so many changes that day, so many pit stops. Jeff drove so hard. We did all these things. Like that day, as a team, we won the Southern 500 and $1 million with a car that was not only at 5th place car at best when we started, it was basically destroyed after the race because it had been damaged so much, and we fixed it, and we did this and we did that. And it was, when I looked at that day, I think that was our biggest victory as a group, to everybody put something in to win that race with a car that probably wasn't capable that day.
Yeah, amazing. Your time as a team owner, how would you encapsulate or synthesize what that was like? I mean, a totally new experience for you, and obviously some highs, some lows.
Yeah, great experience. It was great experience. Great people. The people at Dodge believed in me, and I feel like we did everything that we could. We delivered for them. Good Dodge cars. We won races. Came close to having the Dodge win a championship. Finally, Roger Penske was able to do that for them. But it was a huge change in life from me that I don't, I'm a project guy, like doing that in 500 days, built, all the parts, designed the cars, start the race team, did it like that was what I do. And as it came to going for me trying to do what Rick Hendrick does and what Roger Penske does, what Jack Roush does, that was very difficult for me. And I didn't really know how much I didn't know. I just wasn't, to do what Mr. Hendrick, I'm telling you, do what Mr. Hendrick does and what Mr. Penske does and even what Justin Marks is doing right now, like that takes a complete business mind that's different mindset than somebody that does what I do, right? I'm a field, you know what I mean? You want some stuff, I'll get some stuff done, but you want to run the country, that takes a different person. And so I just never felt comfortable in that role. and we were doing well. We had success, and I got the idea at that time. I was going to bring somebody else in, and I was going to find this perfect partner, and he was going to do that, and I was going to take care of the cars and the team, and we were going to be okay. And as like with most partnerships, that it just didn't work out, and I retired from being 100% active with the race team in about 2008. So, again, some super, super great memories, but then that sense of, man, and I've got to be okay with it, but you know what? I had to look in the mirror one day and say, you know what? Roger Penske and Rick Hendrick are two of my heroes. You're not those guys. The same as I had to look in the mirror that day and say, you want to be a race car driver, but you're not Jeff Gordon, right? Yeah. So I've been blessed to have a lot of really, really good positive things come out of it. That's
great self-reflection.
Business there,
Yeah, no, completely. Well, and speaking of, since then, you've had a lot of finished business or even ongoing business, and you've transformed it into that racing career into so many other things, Ray. I want to go through some of them, and some of them are just an absolute blast. How about building the 850 horsepower Ghost from scratch and taking it up Pikes Peak hill climb in 2018? What was that like?
That was the ultimate for me. Okay, that was the Ray Evernham ultimate. And you're bringing that up because we're just finishing up some stuff, and a little selfish promotion, but actually writing a book about all those experiences. And we've been talking a lot about the Ghost. And what that was a metaphor about my career. I was bored. You question, like, I need something to do. I needed something to energize myself. And I thought, let's build a car the old-fashioned way with everything we learn now, but we're going to build it like we used to build it before we had all of these super tools and, design software and this and that. And we built a car like I would be building an old modified. But then as it developed, we're like, well, let's make it like an Indy car. Well, let's make it a cross between a Trans Am car and modified, an Indy car, and whatever else. And we decided we wanted to take this car and run it around the country, and we've run it at lots of different places. It's got a 36 Chevy body on it, a steel 36 Chevy body. Everything underneath of it we designed. It was built here. It's got full tunnels. It weighs about 2,700 pounds with me in it and fuel. So if the car's under 2,500 pounds, has 850 horsepower with 100. We also have an additional shot of 100 nitrous on it in case you need a little extra boost. And, but it makes about 2,800 pounds of downforce at 180 miles an hour. So it's pretty badass.
Wow, badass is right.
Pikes Peak as rookies, and went up there and won the open experimental class. The experimental class is what we won as rookies. And to me, that kind of put a check mark on my driving career, just saying, okay, that's the biggest thing I've ever done behind the wheel. And it was special to me to do that.
Amazing story. When does the book come out?
Probably going to be out in the first quarter of 2024. That we're working on it right now. And it's really, a lot of those stories that people have wanted to hear about specific races, or the stuff with Jeff Gordon, or, again, like the Pikes Peak trip, but a lot of that behind the scenes stuff of, hey, when you ask me, all right, tell me, how did you become Ray Evernham? It follows all that up. And I think a lot of people will be surprised. They'll be like, oh, wow, I didn't know that, or I didn't, and you start to find out that it no different than probably you in your career, and your DNA comes from all the people you've crossed paths from, and you somehow all these dots get connected, and and then here you are.
Yeah, exactly. Well said. Other projects, you did a voice for Cars 3.
Yeah.
Ray Reverham.
Creative, right?
It's amazing, which you said was one of your most special achievements because of what it meant to your son, Ray J. What do you mean by that?
Well, Ray J is autistic, right? So with an autistic person, and Ray J's been in championship victory lane celebrations and hung out with Jeff Gordon. He's been to the White House. He's been to all those things. And they just don't register in the world of an autistic person as you would expect with a neurotypical person. But for some reason, Ray J's thing is movies and the cartoons and Disney. And all of a sudden, his dad being involved in the production of the Cars 3 movie and then being a character, it took me to his world. Instead of me bringing him to my world all the time, I went to his world, and it was one of the most incredible times that we had. We worked with Pixar. Both Jeff did too. They interviewed us and a lot of the story, and Erin, my wife, got to be part of these interviews about communications, and we spent some time. And you're not going to work with a more wonderful group of people than the people at Pixar, I can tell you that. And Jay Ward, again, love him like a brother, incredibly talented man. But that thing for Ray J was the first time in all the wins, the Daytona 500s, the championships, the car show, that I was in his world, and he got to be around those characters, and it was just amazing.
Yeah, beautiful. Ray Reverham. Speaking of Jay, who's been on the program and is our mutual friend, he tells us that you have some good stories about being in the wrong place at the wrong time, while hunting for cars. And maybe it's the closest you've ever come to death.
I'll tell you what, I've got to be careful how I tell this story. And Jay's got some stories, and I got to be with him and Wayne Carini and did some things on there. But Jay Ward, and him as a friend, he is not only one of the most wonderful, caring people you will ever meet, but he is a serious car guy. He knows a lot about a lot of things. I'm always impressed with his knowledge. But so I know the story he's talking about, so I got to be careful about how I tell this. But when you're hunting cars, you just go, right? You kind of go. And I'm in the South, and so I'm from the North, and I'm a little bit naive about certain areas and things that I'm just naive. Well, I guess long story short, I ended up in the wrong place and got in the middle of what would be a Klan meeting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And came for a car and they tried to get me to go and join this thing they were doing. And I had to explain to them that I didn't have the same beliefs that they had.
I'm only here for the car.
And and it was, so it got interesting, because I thought to myself, how in the hell am I going to tell them why I don't agree with them?
I'm not interested. Right.
And then get out of there. So it was, there was a good bit to the story, but it was sweating. And of course I had a friend of mine with me who was from Australia, who he didn't have a clue. So he was joking around but it was quite interesting. At one point I said to Jay, I felt like every time we were going down the road that we were just waiting for somebody to come up and shoot us with a shotgun or something. So it was, so now I'm very careful about where and when I go to look at stuff if I don't know the people.
So hunting for cars. So how many cars do we have in the Ray Evernham collection now?
Well, I sold a big part of the collection last year at Mecum. But since that, we've been gathering a lot of cars. We've been buying a lot of the vintage IROC cars and whatnot. So the collection right now, all told, is about half the size it was. We're probably 45, 50 cars. But we're a lot of that. Right now, I have 11 IROC race cars, and I don't have a Porsche, that we don't have a Porsche. The Porsche is just untouchable, but the Gen 1, Gen 2 Camaros, Gen 3 Camaros, because actually Gen 3 Camaros are the ones that I worked on, Avengers, Firebirds. I've always been amazed by the IROC series, and that's kind of how I designed that SRX series. Tony Stewart and I really leaning towards the IROC series.
What have you learned in that experience, the SRX?
Again, it's I'm not really involved running it anymore. I started it. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of what we did. I love designing the cars and the tracks and whatnot. But again, turned that over to the businessmen to try and see if they could make it work. Been struggling a little bit with some of those things, but I still think that there is a space for motorsports entertainment in the American market right now. But it's got to be based around the driver, right? It's got people. The drivers are the personality, and we always got to remember that. And we've got to get the drivers close to the fans. We've got to get the fans to be able to see them and to interact. And we don't have to have a 100,000 person stadium. We can go to small tracks. We can take drivers there, but then it's got to be a good TV show. And to be a good TV show, it's got to have things other than racing in it. So again, that was the formula that I wanted. So we'll see. I do think that there's a space for that, but we'll see.
We've talked on this program a ton about Netflix and the influence it's had on racing in America now. And the to your point, there has to be a TV show with a good storyline and a good narrative. You've been in your share of media moments, also as a TV personality. What are your thoughts on the state of racing in America right now, and a lot of these behind the scenes programs that are out there?
I think that they're good. Any exposure to it is going to get people thinking, right? So, I think it's great with the podcast. I think it's great with some of the short stuff that we're seeing, the Netflix stuff. You throw a big net out, right? And then you kind of narrow it down to what's really getting the most hits. I think what they did with the Formula One series was amazing. I mean, it's proven that they've done it. They're doing something like that right now with Garage 56. I think that may be Amazon or whatever.
That's right.
That's going to be a good show. I mean, I think what they did with Garage 56 was really important to American racing and did as much for NASCAR and how far our engineering's come as anything. So to me, I think that was I know it was expensive, but it was a great deal. Had they not had a part failure, they might have upset the apple cart over there with the way that they were running. They were running pretty darn good. They weren't going to win the overall, but they were certainly in pretty good position. And then things like the Chicago Street Race, again, to me, in my opinion, brilliant idea. That's exposing racing, to a different demographic. Instead of asking the people from Chicago to drive out to the other speedway an hour away and fight the traffic and everything. Hey, we'll come to you. We'll take the racing to you. Going back to the old, P.T. Barnum stuff, like, okay, the circus. We'll take the circus to you. And it was successful. So, I think that we've got to have our historical stadiums. We got to keep the Fenway Parks and the Wrigley Fields and stuff like that. But we got to take the show on the road a little bit too. So I feel like racing is in a better place than it's ever been. Because I think they've done a great job with this new gen car, cutting. You're not ever going to. Cut cost. You're not going to cut cost. But the angle, the line that cost was going up on, they've brought that down, and they've also made it so that a new team owner can come in and be competitive, which is key, right? A younger team, again, I'll use Justin Marks again as an example. New team owner, you don't have to have a gazillion billions of past notes and this and that. Comes in fairly competitive because it's somewhat of a spec car. So they're opening the door for new owners. They're opening the door for new manufacturers. They're trying to get a younger demographic. I look at it and go, okay, look, it's not going to happen overnight, but everything that I see NASCAR doing is heading in the right direction. And again, Formula One goes without saying. I mean, just look at their numbers and look what they're doing. They're hitting home runs. And if Formula One is healthy, NASCAR's healthy, IndyCar is going to be healthy, and everything that trickles down under it's going to be healthy. There's some things that what Tony Perella and that group have done with that Trans Am 2 deal. I don't know if you follow the Trans Am 2 series. Phenomenal. 50, 60 right. Cars showing up. So if the big guys are healthy, the rest of it will be healthy.
A lot of young drivers now in NASCAR who are gaining a lot of attention. It kind of reminds me back to the time when you and another young driver were there. What do you think of the state of NASCAR today, and maybe how much younger it's gotten?
Well, I don't want to say that I'm the Nostradamus, but years ago I started to look at what was happening, and guys were running till 55 years old. And then it went to 50, and then and I started to think, okay, this is eventually, as the cars get more technical and the cars get faster, that age is going to start coming down like Formula One. And then at the same time, what I didn't think about was all of the simulators and the iRacings and the way that these kids could start so much younger now with, the Legends cars and quarter midgets. And all of a sudden, we had these 20, 21-year-old guys coming in, and they were competitive right off the bat. So, we're going to progressively see that age level coming down, which is good for a couple of reasons. It brings a younger demographic into the sport, but I still believe if we control it safe wise, again, what I'm starting to do with the SRX, I think there could be a seniors tour. I do, where, hey, a guy's 45 years old, he may not want to run 40 cup races a year or be ready to do that, but he might want to run 10 on a short track at lesser speed. So I think that there's some good possibilities there. I always push probably too hard and want things to happen too fast. But I think that right now, even though we went through a dry spell for a while, the sport's in a really good place.
Yeah, agreed. Let's talk about your show, Americana. Share some history and maybe some crazy stories that you've uncovered on the program.
Americana was just that show. You're like, hey, let's do a TV show just about whatever we want to do. I want to go find cars, and my love of cars goes back to when you were, or when I was a kid. Cars were the backdrop for everything we did. Right? You stood in front of on Easter, you took a picture of your car. Like we didn't have all of the fancy this, fancy that, and they, automobiles and the history. Not just racing, but even the production automobile, it's pretty much documented our timeline of our evolution of what America, USA has been like, right? So we just started, I said, let's kick around the idea, go finding cars that tell a story of America, and they may not have to be a famous person or a famous town, but just something that connects to America. And that's how we came up with the Americana. And it was on Velocity. We did 4 seasons on Velocity, and now Bob Scanlon and his group have started a new Speed Vision network again. So we've teamed up with them, and they're showing the heck out of them, and hopefully we'll start producing some new ones. But it's really a story about a car that is going to be interesting. I used to tell everybody, look, here's our format: E's and C's. Okay, it's got to be educational, it's got to have entertainment, and it's got to have emotion. It's got to have cars, culture, and cool. All right, E's and C's.
Yeah, perfect.
Bring me a story that fits that. Right. And we had a lot of fun with it. That's where we found, we found the Mario Andretti Bronner Hawk and restored it. We found Dan Gurney's, which was Mario's first win. We also found the Indy car that was Dan Gurney's last win. The American Graffiti 1958 Chevy that was driven in the movie by Ron Howard, and that was a car I chased for years. We got it, and I still have that car. So really a lot of great stories, met some great people, but I feel like we saved some very historical cars and told some really great stories.
Big Iron Garage. That's another project that you mentioned being bored earlier, but I can't imagine that you're ever bored. So
I was for a while, but you got to remember when you're out there, when you're winning 10 races a year with Jeff Gordon, or you're flying all over doing, ESPN races and you're working with Rusty Wallace and Brad Daugherty and Dale Jarrett, like those were, if we ever could write a book that wouldn't get us in trouble, if I would only recorded the conversations on the airplanes with Rusty and Dale and Brad, Brad Daugherty is by far and away the funniest guy I've ever worked with in my life. When you know what it's like doing TV or doing production, they're counting down your producers like, okay, we'll back live in 5, 4. Well, Brad would make a comment and crack me up. So every time, as soon as we're about ready to come back live, I'm like, oh God, don't put the camera on me. Don't ask me, because I can't stop laughing. It was a blast doing that with him. So it was easy to get bored when all that stopped.
Well, you're not bored with Big Iron Garage, which is a car restoration custom build business. You started it. It really is all about your lifelong passion. And tell me a little bit about Big Iron, and for those interested in having something in Big Iron, what do they need to do?
Really, Big Iron Garage, I'm surrounded by some of the people I've worked with for years, and I'll put my guys up against anybody in the business as far as building, restoring cars, And I just decided that, look, we'll take in some other work. So we do, besides restoring all of my cars, we do take in customer work. We've done stuff for Scott Borchetta from Big Machine. We've done stuff for Dave Roberts. Again, we restored the Andretti car, the Gurney car. We did a bunch of different things. So we do take work here. And the best way is just to reach out on a Big Iron Garage on our website, and we get probably tons of people say, hey, I got this car, I got that car. Please send them to Big Iron Garage or send them to Ray Evernham Enterprises, because it's nothing for us to go like, hey, you know what, there's an IROC car out in the woods or whatever, and we'll go get it. So right now, we're trying to gather up a lot of IROC cars, but we're really pride ourselves in being able to make an existing car, let's say, better, or design or build something really unique. And we try not to do two of the same. I love to do different projects. If you said, hey, the only guy that ever got me to do 10 of anything was Ron Pratt, because Ron wanted these special dune buggies, the sand buggies. So we built him 10 of them. But other than that, we normally build one-offs.
You're a Motorsports Hall of Famer now. You're a NASCAR Hall of Famer, of course. Your thoughts on being inducted into both?
Incredibly humbling, right? Because that whole that whole sense of what do they call it? The fear of being an imposter or whatever. You're like, what am I doing here with all these people? They're going to find out I don't belong here.
Forrest Gump is being inducted.
It's as I said, it's very humbling it's the greatest honor that you can get, to be recognized by so many of the heroes, and proud to be in both. I will tell you, but Motorsports Hall of Fame, NASCAR Hall of Fame, anytime that we get recognized like that, it is it really makes me feel like I haven't let all the people down who have helped me, because we talked about your DNA, and the people, so many people throughout my career have given me a leg up, either with knowledge or money, or they've just picked me up when I believed I couldn't. They told me I could, and when you get recognized, you can look at those people and say, you didn't waste your time on me. Like, you didn't, I didn't let you down. And that I'm gonna tell you, it's very hard to stand on that stage and talk without having a bunch of emotion come through. I will tell you that, but it's, those things are very, very important to me.
Who would be the one person that you think should be in the NASCAR Hall of Fame that's maybe never been added?
Oh, wow. I feel like all of the people that fit the criteria or deserve to get in there will get added. That's a very, very hard question, because every single person who's in there deserves to be in there. And, we're part of the voting list as people, that are in there. The list of people behind them, everyone on that list has more than enough credentials to get in there. And I'm thinking, God, oh, well, yeah. So it would be hard for me to pick and say, okay, well, yeah, this person definitely needs to go in ahead of all these other people, because you think that. I'm gonna tell you, you think that until you start looking and doing all the research, and then you're like, oh yeah, so it's hard. As I said, the one thing that I will tell you is that I do 100% believe it. Every year they pick the right group. Every year somehow they pick the right group, and the list that's waiting, every one of those people deserve to be in there as well. And I know a lot of people ask me specifically about Smokey Yunick, and I'm a big Smokey fan. Was friends with him, and he is on that waiting list. And I think someday he will get in there. But as close and everything as I was and everything, when I look at the voting and how they do it, and what that whole and then people hate it when they say this whole body of work. everybody they've picked so far, I think they've made the right choice.
Yeah. Final thing, what I saw at Amelia, just to go back to the start of our conversation, is a bit of a measure of celebrity about you. Now, when you hosted the panel where the conversation occurred about Le Mans, what is it like for you to have that celebrity status?
It's just, everybody's got an ego, right? So it's just enough to keep my ego going. You like to put on your suit, and you like to go up there and you do a good job. You get your 15 minutes of fame or whatever it is. But I think most of what it does is allow me to operate in that world with some credibility, because they know, hey, I don't know diddly about this Rolls-Royce Ghost. I'm trying to learn, or this and that. But I think everyone that comes to one of our seminars or one of our panels knows that I put in the work. Like, I'll do the research, and I do my very best to make sure that, again, going back to that E's and C's, right? That we entertain, we emotion and educate, and that everyone has a good time. And I work hard at that. And I think that they respect me for that. I wouldn't say that I'm a celebrity. I always tell everybody I'm just a guy that knows a lot of celebrities.
Well, you did a masterful job hosting the panel at Amelia, and it was very entertaining. I will tell you that. So
that was you cannot have a panel with Kenny Schrader on it and not be entertaining.
Yes. Or Justin Bell.
Justin Bell. Yeah.
Well, you might be the kid from Hazlet, New Jersey. You might be Forrest Gump, but you're also Ray Evernham. And thank you for sharing your cars and culture story with us here today on the program.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed it, and sorry it took us so long to get together. But look forward to catching up at Amelia.
Great. Thank you, Ray. Thanks again to my guest today, NASCAR Hall of Famer Ray Evernham. And to see my interview with Ray, go to the Cars and Culture YouTube channel. Like and subscribe to see more than 100 interviews. And thanks for listening to the show. You can follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook, as well as on Instagram at Cars and Culture SXM, and on Twitter at Cars and Culture. I'm Jason Stein. We'll see you down the road.